and welcome to episode 54 of our Lunch and Learn series. Mental health can often feel like a big, complex topic, something we only address when things go wrong. But what if mental health is already showing up in your day, in your stress levels, your energy, your focus, your interactions? And what if supporting it didn't require a complete overhaul, but more a few simple intentional shifts? In this coming EQ Lunch and Learn, we take a practical, no jargon approach to mental health work at work, exploring how emotional intelligence helps you recognize what's really going on beneath the surface and what you can do about it. This session is designed as an appetizer for the upcoming EQ4Africa Conference 4.0, giving you just enough insight to reflect, reset, and begin. A teaser and a taster of what to expect on May 22nd, 2026. In this session, we'll look at how mental health is really how mental health is really convoluted in our conversations, and we'll simplify it as something lived in everyday work moments. We'll look at how we can notice the signals where pressure, stress, and emotional load are showing up for you. We'll ask our panelists to take a look at how we can simplify it and make practical, simple shifts in our day to day that we can apply immediately to support our mental well being. It's not about fixing everything, it's about starting where you are and taking one small step that makes a real difference. So let's jump into it. I have a really exciting group of panelists, as we always do. So, as Mucha says, you bring the lunch and we bring the learning. I want to bring up front Lynette Etemesi. Lynette Etemesi is a lawyer and public policy specialist with expertise in governance, gender policy, and rights-based legal reform across Africa. She currently serves as a public gender policy advisor at Dea Hub Africa, where she works at the intersection of law, public policy, and inclusive development, advising on frameworks that advance equity and systemic change. Lynette has played a pivotal role in Kenya's mental health reform landscape. She contributed to the drafting of the Mental Health Amendment Act 2022 and was part of the decriminalization of suicide committee, which successfully advanced the removal of attempted suicide from Kenya's penal code. Her work reflects a deep commitment to aligning legal systems with human rights and dignity, particularly for vulnerable populations. Beyond policy formulation, Lynn is a recognized thought leader and writer on law and society, shaping conversations around justice, identity, and social transformation on the continent. With experience spanning legal analysis, multi-country program coordination, and advocacy, Lynette brings both technical depth and strategic insight into policy processes and conversations alike. She's known for her ability to translate complex legal and policy frameworks into practical people-centered solutions that drive meaningful impact. Her quote for today is, "Mental health is a daily practice of courage, the courage to pause, to feel, to set boundaries, and to choose yourself without apology." Help me welcome Lynn Etemesi into the room. Welcome, Lynn. Lynn, you're muted.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Susan. And hi, everybody.
Hi, and welcome. I'm excited about the conversation we're about to have. For our audience, feel free to connect with Lynn on her LinkedIn. Shared it there for your reference. Our second panelist is Mukunya Mugo. Mukunya is in the people business. He loves meeting and connecting with like-minded people to do amazing things. He thrives in creating spaces where people can be themselves, achieve their full potential, whilst having fun and making a difference. He stands on the premise that God brought each one of us into this world and our specific situation for a reason. So we should trust him to reveal the reason and step into our purpose for his honor and glory. His quote this afternoon is, "Why so serious? Let's put a smile on that face." If anyone knows where that's from, the Joker in Batman. Welcome, Mukunya. Whoop. There you are.
Hi, all. How are you? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. And it's a pleasure to be on this call and looking forward to an interactive session. Thank you.
Thanks, Mukunya. To connect with Mukunya, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn and hear more about purpose driven living. Our next panelist is Dr. Frederick Wangai. Dr. Frederick Wangai is a trusted consultant physician with a specialized focus on infectious diseases, holistic wellness, occupational health, and lifestyle medicine. Licensed by the Ministry of Labor as a designated health practitioner, he partners with corporates and institutions to deliver proactive occupational health solutions that keep teams performing at their peak. As a lecturer at the University of Nairobi, Dr. Wangai blends academia with real world impact, making complex health topics relatable in engaging, interactive forums. His passion? Empowering individuals and corporates to take the driver's seat in their health journey, promoting strength, resilience, and longevity. A strong advocate for mental health as the cornerstone of resilience, Dr. Wangai adopts a holistic biophysiological approach, tackling the physical, emotional, and social dimensions of well being. His mission is clear to help men and women build a healthier, more vibrant future, one step, one checkup, and one lifestyle choice at a time. With his expertise and relatable approach, I'm so pleased to have Dr. Wangai inspire us as he does others to recognize that investing in their health is investing in their success. It's not just about living longer, it's about living stronger. Welcome, Dr. Wangai. There we are. Karibu sana, Dr. Wangai, and karibu to all our panelists. I don't know, I'm particularly excited to have this conversation as we look forward to our conference coming up. And I'll start with a question that I'd like to pose to all of you. When we think about mental health, it kind of can feel a little bit overwhelming. It's a kind of a buzzword nowadays, and people don't exactly know what it means. But when you think about it in the context of everyday work, what is one simple way it's already showing up that people often overlook? And Dr. Wangai, let's start with you, seeing as I brought you in last.
All right, thank you very much. Mental health, as you rightly said, mental health the term has been greatly overused, sometimes even abused as well. They say, oh, no, I can't come to work today because I need to take care of my mental health, and you run away from handing reports that's, overdue. But mental health is something that we're actually seeing right now on a larger scale, especially after COVID. It's now the new pandemic. And everyone is, it's just a buzzword talking about mental health. And the thing about mental health is that it comes very subtly, when you have, just as something even as simple as oversleeping can actually point towards depression. Eating, too much or even too little. These are some of the small things. And we have various tools, clinical tools, that point towards everyday small practices that you may or may not be aware of that are a sign of underlying issues that you need to take care of. So mental health and awareness of it is something that we really need to emphasize on in today's world.
So true. I think it's very interesting that conflict or the two sides of the coin, where we're using mental health or abusing, as you say, on one end, and on the other end, we are ignoring signs. Let me come to you, Mugo. How do you see it? I mean, in the context of our everyday work, what's one simple way it's already showing up that people often are overlooking?
That's a very good analysis. And I think for me, from a people perspective, it's how people show up in various different forums. There was a person who was always talkative and suddenly becomes quiet, reserved, or pulls back from conversations. There are those who their energy levels were very high when they walk into the room, and then suddenly they don't have the energy that they had. So those are some of the simple ways you can observe. And I think also looking back, as Dr. Wangai was saying, and as you spoke, some of the performance issues we normally see in people could be as a result of mental health issues, or something that somebody is dealing with, and we don't recognize that, and we quickly look to identify as a performance issue rather than could be something else. So it's also important to take a step back and observe, are there those underlying issues that Dr. Ungai was talking about, that you notice that it could be one of the reasons why performance is dipped, or why the person isn't showing up how they normally show up.
Oh, you already have me thinking about my life and also the people that I work with, and I'm thinking, what am I missing? Lynette, what's been your experience? What do you think that is coming up as signals that we might be already overlooking?
I think this is a very interesting question, and I'm glad some of the two things my colleagues have highlighted, the aspect of the behavioral shifts, like 1 minute you're not okay, the next minute everything is okay. But I think the other thing I really want to put out there is the mental load of functioning, because there are some people who are very good at hiding it. You have people who are high functioning, high performing, but they're still dealing with internal pressure. And one of the things that I really statements that I really struggle with is people say, leave your baggage at the door. But I always, like when you're coming to your office or when you're coming to work, leave your baggage at the door. But people don't understand that that baggage is what they carry it into the office. And people need to understand how to deal with. People are dealing with trauma. People have gone through so many things. You might find you have someone who's at home and maybe they're going through a very abusive relationship with their partner, and you're telling them to leave that baggage at the door. Somebody is maybe has a sick parent at home and they're caregiving, and all this contributes, but you still expect this person to perform, you still expect this person to be at peak. But now what they do is, now since you've told them to leave it at the door, then they have to actually be very high functioning, perform, but they don't let people know what's killing them inside. And then when something happens to this person, you're like, but I thought she was okay. No, she wasn't, because we told her to leave her baggage at the door. So I think that's one of the things that we really need to look at, like, how is this person functioning? So I feel like that's not really looked into, especially when you say leave your baggage at the door. Yeah.
Wow, Lynette, and just sticking with that for a little bit. It is a bit of a shift. I think for a long time, the workplace was a place for business, and there's no room for your baggage, as you say, right? And as we try to make that shift, what are some of the things that you have identified in your experience or with your peers? What are some of the everyday pressures or emotional loads that a lot of young professionals are carrying, and they don't always recognize as a matter of mental health?
I think the first thing that I have noticed, especially with my peers being, mid-level, is that we are constantly living in a state of urgency. There's always an unexpected expectation for you to be available, always responsive, always progressive. And then this creates some sort of anxiety, because since you're living in a state of urgency, you're not really you're not living in the moment. You're always moving on to what is the next thing. So I feel like there's that. And then I feel another thing is, we don't realize that also one of the reasons that comes into this or comes into play is our relationship with time. Because when it comes to that, is that we are simply shaped by, how we experience time instead of moving through it. And I'll break it down. So, because let me give an example. So for instance, you have started your job, you're an early professional, and then you have this time. First of all, you have this timeline where by 27, 28, I need to be mid-level to senior level. And then what also does that is your environment is not contributing towards it. So you're always rushing through and moving on to the next big thing instead of savoring the moment. So in my whole idea is, we are constantly moving state of urgency. We have the time to pause and to reflect and to think. And in that state of urgency, then that makes us feel like, we no longer have boundaries. As long as it works, or whatever it is that works towards advancing our profession, then it's a go for us. So I feel like that state of urgency really undoes a lot of boundaries for us as young people. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that state of urgency, I think you're so spot on, Lynette, because I think with all the technological advancements, and there's this pressure that now that there's tech, you can do more and you need to do more. And then with all the social media, you're comparing with what somebody else is doing at 28 and at 30. And I really like what you say about you need to be be present, savor. In fact, you said savor the moment. That's really really impactful, rather than just kind of floating through life and missing out on those moments. And yeah, so thank you for that. And that brings me to Mugo. Let me come to you because in your bio it was very clear about being in the moment and purpose and being there. And when you try and relate that back into the workplace from an organizational perspective, where do you see mental health quietly impacting performance and engagement and even culture, even when it's not explicitly recognized as a mental health matter?
That's a very interesting perspective, and I like the question. I think for us in the human resources phase, I think one of the things is how do we always require people, like Lynn said, in terms of everyone being connected all the time, where you have a message that has been sent at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and by 8 a.m., you've been asked with a response. So that's how some of the pressures come in. And there are a couple of memes that go around on LinkedIn, which are for my age bracket. That's why we get our content vis-a-vis TikTok and Instagram, Insta. So I think those are posts that went around where a manager sent a message on Friday at 10 p.m. And then on Monday morning send a follow-up message saying it's been 3 days, you've not responded. So the employer was like, hey, I checked out at 5 p.m. Saturday was our weekend, Sunday was a weekend. I've just got into the office, and in terms of my priorities, this is not among the things I am prioritizing. So I think also it's recognizing that people have lives beyond the office. What are they doing on their off the office time? And then to what Lynn also talked about, how do we also shut down? Do we have boundaries in terms of I'm working from home? Do I have a specific space that I work from? That when I'm seated at that space, it's work. When I leave that space, I disconnect. I'm in the moment. Then there's the issue of how do managers show up? How do people leaders show up? Are you creating an environment where it's okay for somebody to say, I'm not okay? Or are you creating an environment where you say, okay, I struggle with this or that, and show vulnerability so that also people can be free to be themselves and be vulnerable and also speak about their struggles and the challenges. And I think the other way is also showing up when we have those team meetings with the people we report into or the person who reports into us. Do we create that culture of checking in? How are you? And really, really, how are you doing? How's your family? How's your hobby? How's your pet? Whatever it is that is within your space. Is there something else that's going on? I remember last year, as a result of the stop work order, a lot of NGOs were affected by the funding crisis. And you have people who are in caregiving roles where they are single but taking care of their elderly parents. You have people who have pets, you have people who have children. Each one of them had their own environment and things that were keeping them awake, things that were keeping them concerned. How will I manage to cater for this ecosystem that I support beyond myself? So it's also recognizing that people show up differently and not the same way that you show up or how you present yourself, and respecting their differences and how they present themselves.
Thanks, Mogo. And then, that gives us a lot to reflect on in the organizational context. And, Lynette talked about it a little bit when talking about leave your baggage outdoor. And those are the kinds of cultures that are being built up. And as much as we look outwards to, how is the conversation, how are people receptive, the outside people receptive to the conversation on well-being? Dr. Wangai, I want to ask you, from an emotional intelligence perspective, why do people often miss the early signs of declining mental health in themselves before you even go to why is no one else noticing outside? Why are we not noticing it within ourselves?
Well, that's a very good question. A number of reasons, actually. The first reason, that comes to mind is many people actually downplay or underestimate how frequent or how easy it is to have a mental health problem. So statistics are clear. 1 in 5. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. Can add 1 more 5. 1 in 5 of us actually has dandruff. Okay, so dandruff, very, very common. But 1 in 4 have a mental health issue. So I can see there's Susan, Lynn, Mukunya. And if you can't figure out the person, then you're probably the one. So it is actually more prevalent, and it is more common than actually we do realize. And the signs, I mean, they're very subtle, and I see it all the time. I'll give you a very good example. This morning, I saw a lady in a hospital, and she was admitted because she says that she has not been able to pass urine for the last 2 weeks. Now that's an emergency. That's an emergency. And so, of course, I've run a whole battery of tests on her. I've done an ultrasound, looked at her bladder, looked at her blood works, looked at her kidneys, everything normal, like 100% normal. So one of the things that happens is, once you do an ultrasound, you have to, go to the toilet afterwards because you have a full bladder. And can you imagine, she actually went and passed urine totally normally, came back and slept in bed. And when I saw her after the ultrasound, she said, you know what? The last time I actually passed urine was 2 weeks ago. So the nurses who have been her in the ward actually confirm that she has passed urine. Of course, I wasn't there, but when she comes to talk to me, and she 101% believes that she has not passed urine. In fact, she says, doc, I think you need to take me right now for a kidney transplant. My kidneys are not working. And going deeper into her history, we see, actually, she has been on treatment for depression. And this is not her first admission. She's had a series of hospital admissions for depression and for anxiety. In fact, in her last admission, she was telling the doctor that she needs a heart pacemaker because her heart is not working. And it's not a joke. She firmly believes it with all her heart that her body is just not functioning. So that is the other end of the spectrum in terms of mental health. So where you've totally broken down, you've had a mental breakdown, but it starts very subtly. It just as because the signs really are physical. You can be tired, for example, and the problem with these physical signs is that we have been trained to interpret them as mere character flaws. So being tired can easily be touted as being lazy. Being anxious can becomes weak. Being withdrawn becomes antisocial. So we punish the signals that the body is giving us instead of reading it. And I think that's one of the big things that we really need to realize and take home, that the body will always give you a warning sign. It will always give you a smoke signal. It's just we tend to really underplay and we brush them off. Secondly, we really tend to lack what we call interoceptive accuracies. Interoception, a big word, basically means how your brain interprets what the body is telling it. It's your ability to read your own internal body signals, really. And so we tend to lack that a lot. And most of us adults, we've lost it totally. Children, on the other hand, they have it. But as they grow up and enter into adolescence, we train them out of it. So you ignore what your body is telling you, and instead we hit hard. And because we have this pressure to perform. And lastly, in our whole productivity kind of culture where we need to, we have targets, we have to achieve, we have to perform. This culture has made numbness feel like discipline. So when the early sick think we are getting stronger, but yet at the end of the day, we are actually getting further and further away from ourselves.
Wow. Wow. So what I'm hearing you say, Dr. Wangai, is that over time we've adopted practices like, numbness, like you say, or silencing when our body's communicating to us, or masking it because of whatever we expect the society, or whatever we believe the society expects of us. And yeah, I'm thinking deeply. And as I'm reflecting for myself, maybe we can come to you, Mugo, and you can, tell us in your experience, if we're saying that mental health is showing up and shaped in the small daily moments, what are some of the patterns or habits that you have seen that unintentionally eroded over time?
Some of the patterns I've seen that have eroded our mental well-being. Is that the question?
Yes.
I think one, what Dr. Wangai said in terms of COVID, the blurring of office and home, that for me is one of the things that triggered or accelerated this issue of mental health. And that also led to an always on, always connected workforce, whereby we feel the pressure. I need to log in. I need to respond to that email. I need to join that Teams meeting, that Zoom meeting, even if I have nothing to do, I have no contribution, and therefore I am stuck. My hours get compressed. And I also think for me, stepping back is also looking at how social media, smartphones have made us a lot dumber and pressured. So our attention span has become a lot shorter. And if you look at what your feeds are on, whether YouTube, TikTok, etc., anything that is 5 minutes or longer, most guys skip and move on. If you get a WhatsApp message that has read more, what is the first thing you'll do? Skip and move on. So we also bombarded by too much information, not necessarily quality information. And as you were speaking, one of the things that Lynn mentioned about being in the moment, there's a photo, I don't know whether you have seen it, about the Vatican, where there's a photo where the Pope comes out, and before you, people will be holding candles. And nowadays, whenever there's an event, even look around yourself, everyone has a smartphone recording the moment, but not being in the moment to enjoy that moment and to see what's happening. So we also bombarded or have the challenge. I think what Susan mentioned about is what you also talked about, Susan, in terms of keeping up with the Joneses. I see somebody else's Instagram feed, their LinkedIn post that they are living the life, which may be true, may not be true, but that causes me to become anxious, causes me to fuliza. If you look at our statistics in terms of how we're taking loans, whether it's mobile money or even banks, a lot of people are taking loans to show up that we are living the life, and that creates additional pressure. And the other thing I'm seeing, as I also take another step back, is the world we're living in. There's so much turmoil, there's so much going on around us that causes a lot of people to question, what's the purpose? What's the point? There's also a lot of people feeling, I cannot change my situation. Therefore, the feeling of helplessness. And that feeling of helplessness also causes people to take matters into their own hands.
Thanks for that, Mugo. And I really, as the conversation is evolving, I'm hearing a lot of the need to tap in to self and understand what's happening. And somehow along the way, with everything, with all the advancements that are supposed to make life easier, we're actually tapping out more than we are tapping in. Lynn, let me come to you, and maybe you can just also share some of the patterns or the behaviors that you're seeing that have been eroding away at mental health over time.
I think the other thing, okay, first of all, is the first thing is that people are unable to separate urgency from importance. And I'll give an example. If you're the most reliable person at work who comes in and always fixes the mess or always ensures that everybody is sorted out, you understand? So you're always there to, I'm sorry, to, when someone messes up, you're always there picking it up. Your mind is always constantly switched on and thinking, you know what, this person is going to mess up. So I always have to come in and step in. But is it urgent or is it important? Because at the end of the day, you end up carrying somebody else's load, and that also affects your mental health because you'd have just stuck around and done your tasks. And in my opinion, I'm like, you're coming in to do yours plus somebody else's. So people need to be able to separate urgency from importance. And I think this is, for me, I'm speaking about myself because also being a first child and a deputy parent, I'm always there waiting for someone to, mess up something and then you come in and fix it. The other thing is perfectionism. The whole idea of wanting to be perfect and wanting to do everything at 100%, you have to make sure that everything is okay. I mean, do your best and let it be good enough. If there needs to be something that needs to be corrected here and there, it's okay. But don't stick to the notion that everything has to be perfect, because if it's not perfect for you, then that already, it actually kind of creates anxiety for you and also kind of like makes you start doubting yourself and your capabilities if your work is not perfect. And then the other thing that I am seeing a lot is people equate endurance to strength. There's a difference between endurance and strength. You understand? There's that aspect where maybe and this could be in the workplace or this could be outside, you're always the strong one, you're always the one who is putting things together, but it's okay for you, you're okay with the version of being told, listen, you're the strong one, you need to put things together. But the whole idea is you're taking a lot of things from other people, and that already breaks you mentally. So for me, those are some of the aspects that I've seen on top of what my colleagues have said. Yeah.
Wow, some nuggets right there. Mugo, please jump in.
I think something else that hit me as Lynn was speaking, I think for me, the other thing is if I look at relationships now and back then, we don't have that real social connection. And most of our relationships, when I look at mine, there are those people I've been with for 20 plus years. That reveals a bit more about my age. There are people on the call who are about 20 right now. There are people I've known that long. But then there are people who we've gone through life together. And then the other thing is, as men, one of the challenges is we do not open up. We do not speak about our challenges, what's going on. There are several stories where you said you guys hang out every weekend, drink. Why did you notice Mukunya was struggling? Because our conversations are never deep. They're always on the surface. So as men, one of the things that people need to do, and also anyone else, is also have those real conversations. If I'm struggling, if I'm having issues, who's the one person I can talk to? Who can I open up to in a space where they will not judge me and I will not hear my dirty linen, so to speak, being the center of conversation going forward. So we don't have, in my opinion, those spaces are shrinking. And the last bit I just wanted to say was to what Lynn was talking about perfection is, how many of us grew up knowing failure is okay? How many of us knew being number last in class is okay? Right? There
It
was always a
wasn't.
pressure. Yes, yes, you have to be number one. Why are you not number one? Again, failure is okay. The question is, did you learn from that failure? And I like what Lynn said. Did you give it your best? So now my question is, did you give it your best? If you gave it your best, that's all I can expect from you. I will not expect you to give me an A, to give me 100%. I want you to give me your best, and that's all that counts. Thanks.
Thanks, Mugo. And as you were speaking, I was seeing Dr. Wangai nodding quite a bit. Is there something you wanted to add to that?
No, just, that's a sense of perfectionism. I think last week, one of my friends called me up and she tells me, you know what, I think you really, really need to, introspect and search yourself and pray hard against the spirit of perfectionism. So, because it is driving you crazy, and I love what Lynn and Mukunya have said. Even just being able to realize that a lot of our patterns that we have now have been built and hardwired into us from childhood. So if you are a firstborn, for example, that sets you up for a certain mental health, stereotype or, a profile later on in adulthood. You're very performance driven. You have this overwhelming sense of responsibility. You carry your own burden plus the burden of, everyone else in the room, in your department. And, or for example, even your parenting, how your parents, brought you up. And they always say that there's no manual to parenting. It's something that you learn on the go, but you can definitely see the difference between, for example, myself and how I was parented as a firstborn vis-a-vis, the lastborn in our house, and going, 20, 30, years down the line, these stark differences that are seen in between that. So again, boils down to awareness, being able to see, okay, what was my background like, and how is that influencing my patterns right now, in my adulthood and in future, is really, really key.
Thanks for that, Doc. And, just sticking with that for a little bit, you talk about the self-awareness and in our conversations, we really like to get some really practical things that someone can apply. So I want to just bounce back to you and say, what is one emotional intelligence tool or a practice that someone can start using immediately to better manage their mental and emotional state at work?
Okay. I'd recommend 4 things, actually, not just one. The first is take a moment and step back and actually have an honest conversation with yourself. And there are various tools that you can be able to use. I think last week I was giving a talk just similar to the same, and just asking people, for example, I'll give you 5 questions that you can ask yourself. In the last 30 days, have you worked past 9 p.m. more than twice a week? Yes or no? Have you skipped a meal because of a meeting at work? Yes or no? Have you slept less than 6 hours for more than 3 nights? Yes or no? Have you felt wired but exhausted when you wake up? Waking up and you're already tired and you were like, when was I doing a marathon in my dreams? Kind of a thing. Number 5, have you relied on caffeine before noon to reset? 6, have you had a drink primarily to take the edge off? Number 7, have you cancelled a personal or a family commitment for work? Okay. 8, have you noticed, any headaches or, heartburn, or any unusual backaches that you really can't explain? Number 9, have you said the phrase, you know what, I'm going to rest after this quarter, I'll submit my report and then I'm going to take leave? Have you said yes to that? Or lastly, which is really important, have you skipped a medical check that you knew that you needed? So what we actually say, I've listed 10 questions, and out of those 10 questions, if you have 2 yeses or below, then you're good in terms of your mental health space. If you have between 3 to 5 yeses, then you are actually at borderline in terms of mental health distress. But if you answered yes to 6 or more, you need to come and see Dr. Wangai right now, and we need to have a conversation on how to help your mental health. So I would say number 1, you really need and there are many tools available, just like what I've said right now, to actually have a self-introspection. Secondly, learning to listen to your body is really, really, really key. And some of the patterns and daily habits that you can take, I call this the 3 breath body scan. So the first breath, when you walk into a room or some form of activity that has high stakes, or walking into anything that matters, it could be a meeting, it could be a difficult conversation, it could be, even picking up, a school pickup, First, take 3 slow breaths. On the first breath, notice your jaw. So is your jaw tightening? Okay. On the second breath, notice your shoulders. Are you feeling, any discomfort or any tension in your shoulders? And on the third breath, try and notice your stomach. Okay. So those 3 things, because those are some of the early body signals that, there's something off in your mental health. You're really not trying to fix anything. You're just asking your body what state it already is in at that point in time. Because the truth of the matter is really, you cannot regulate your mental health. You cannot regulate an emotion that you have, which you have not yet noticed. So we need to teach ourselves to notice what are we feeling on the inside. And so once you take those 3 breaths, you're able to actually improve and heighten your self-awareness and your mental health state. And really, at the end of the day, bridging that gap between, a stimulus and response, that is where emotional intelligence really, really lies.
Hey, Dr. Mangai, as you were talking, I could see Lynn and myself and Mugo were like, and the 10 questions were like, ooh.
Yes. No, it's really, really key. I mean, how many of us actually eat lunch or take lunch at our desks at work? Because, when you're answering emails, you're having your meal of the day. You think you're saving yourself, that 20 minutes, but in actual sense, you're teaching your nervous system that meals are not safe. You're rewiring your stress baseline just like that. So being intentional about doing the simple habits, get out of your desk, go and have lunch in the cafeteria, on the couch. That small step does wonders for your mental health and your rewiring. Because remember, we're always trying to program ourselves towards good, effective, healthy mental habits that have a return on investment in the long term.
Thank you for that. And as we reflect on that and even do our own inventory of self, Lynn, let me come to you and maybe you can, as you think around it and you are doing, I saw you. But what, I'm sure there's some things or practices that you have already adopted or you've seen others adopting that have made a meaningful impact to your day-to-day well-being. What can you share with us?
I would share from my personal experience because in my end, I realized that a lot of because I like talking about it. I'm a person of lived experience. I have had depression for the longest time and I've struggled with anxiety. One of the things that I have really, really struggled with is overgiving. My time, my emotions, at work, at home. And one of the few things is that I'm learning is number one, allow yourself to receive, not just give. You understand? So one of the things is, this is very unfamiliar territory for me because I'm always, it's okay for me to give of my time. If they don't give it, it's fine. But I'm learning there's that aspect of, people can actually step in and actually be there for you and assist you and take off that emotional load. You just have to actually voice it, and that is one of the things that ask for help. Ask for help, because if you don't ask for it, you won't receive it, and you'll constantly be, and it kind of builds resentment. Despite the anxiety, it also breeds resentment. Because at the end of the day, you're like, I'm always the one who's doing this. I'm always the one covering for her when she's always late. I'm always doing this for this person, but they cannot do this for me. You understand? But one thing I've learned is closed mouths don't get fed. Voice your needs. You understand? If you're feeling you're overwhelmed and you need somebody to assist you, ask. And you'll be very surprised how people are actually willing to assist you. The other thing that I've learned is voice your boundaries, and no is a complete answer. by itself. Don't stop feeling guilty for saying no to something you're not comfortable with because you want to people please, or you want to, people to, you want people to constantly see that you're there. No is a complete answer. If you're feeling burdened, if you're feeling overwhelmed, you cannot be able to do something, or you don't have the capacity to do something, it is okay for you to voice your needs. As my mother says, nobody's going to beat you at your big age. So just, you might as well, if it's no, it's a no. Stop trying to go around, or stop putting yourself in places that you wouldn't want to be and that are actually affecting your mental health. The other thing that I talked about recently is stop preempting other people's needs and wait for them to voice them. Stop preempting that we've been given this work, and she's not going to be able to do it alone. So let me come in and step in and help her. Who asked you? Nobody asked you. Did she tell you she didn't have the capacity? Did he tell you he didn't have the capacity? Stop preempting people's needs. When they need your help, they will ask for it. You understand? So because this is you taking up a lot of the overload for somebody else, and maybe they've not asked. So you're putting the mental overload and the emotional overload to yourself, and that's it. And the other thing I always say, and this might sound controversial, but it's okay. It is okay to disappoint people once in a while. That is one thing I'm going to tell people. I think the hardest thing for me I've always been a yes person. Or do you want to go with me for lunch? Yes. Do you want to do this? Yes. Do you want to do? So you find yourself, you have so much on your plate and it's very overwhelming. So for me in my head, I'm thinking, if I would have just said no, nothing would have happened. Of course, they would have looked for other options. But that doesn't mean it's going to cancel out your friendship. It's going to cancel out your relationship at work. It is okay to disappoint people once in a while. And I think after that, I've learned that my life is very, very peaceful. And lastly, as Daktari said, there's the aspect of reading your body signs, but I'd also tell people on the other end, move your body. Move your body. There is so much. Move your body. I tell people, I've become a slave to working out or exercising my body, not because of wanting to have a six-pack or to look fabulous, but because of how good it makes me feel afterwards. The endorphins, the dopamine that comes with it, it really helps you to think clearly. I tell people, one of the closest places for me is Jaffrey's. It closes at 10 p.m. Sometimes if I find myself, I can't sleep, I'm in my pajamas and my walking shoes, and I'm in Jaffrey's at 9 p.m. And then I realized, oh my goodness, kumbe tuko wengi, like we are many who are dealing with so much. But the whole idea is just move your body. It really makes a huge difference. I tell people, depression really used to hit me hard. I used to be the people who used to, past COVID, because it really crept up, or it really became visible during COVID. But post COVID, I would sit in my house and, you'd be closed curtains for days. But I started, and on medication that makes you feel terrible, but I started moving my body. And to be honest, I don't need it anymore. As long as I'm in the gym every day, or I'm walking, or I'm doing something, it really helps to lift that mental load. Yeah, so that's it from me.
Wow. And thank you so much, Lily. I love that you're sharing from your lived experience. And so I'm doubly sure of what you're saying, because you're not giving theory. And that's really powerful when you give that. And I like that you're giving us permission to even do what is out of the ordinary, 9 p.m. walk at Jaffrey's. Hey, why not? Yeah. No is a complete sentence, which I think a lot of the time we don't feel like. It's always no and then an explanation, or you don't even say the no at all. So giving yourself permission to put up those boundaries and to choose yourself is really powerful, and a bit tricky, but it helps when we hear lived experience that it can work. My panelists, allow me to just have a quick look at who's in the room with us. Shout outs from Charles Masinde in Mombasa. We see you, Charles. Karibu sana. I've also noted that you have a couple of questions that we'll be sharing with the panelists to address. Karibu sana, Marianne. I have an interesting one here from Justice. As we were talking about having lunch at the desk, he's like, that's not me having my lunch at my desk. So we're having, real conversations about what we're really experiencing. And as we talk about that, what is really happening, and even as somebody is having their lunch at their desk, Mukunya, let me come to you and just, interrogate a little bit further on what is it that organizations can, one practical action that an organization can take to really support mental health in a way that feels real and not just policy driven?
That's a very good one. Well, one of the things I've seen are how does the organization define mental health? Is it a problem or is it something that they want to help employees deal with? So it's the flow of work. So simple things in terms of your medical cover. Do you have an employee assistance program? Within that program, have you baked in support structures that allow an employee to seek a counselor, whether it's financial, substance abuse, domestic issues, child issues, pet issues, etc.? Do you have that baked in as something that an employee can seek help without having to go through HR or their line manager as an individual, number one, and for them and their family members or whoever their nucleus family is. So that is one thing. The other thing is in terms of making sure that we demystify what is mental health. It's the same way we tell people we do your annual checkup or do a performance review. Do we normally equip line managers, who are your first contact with your employees, to understand, to pick up the signs, to have that empathy, to have that human face? For example, Susan comes in late. She used to come in at 7 a.m. Now she's coming at 10 a.m. The first thing the manager will say is you're slacking off. But there could be something going on that the manager becomes the first point of contact. Say, I noticed you're no longer coming at 7, or you come at 7. Is there something that we need to be aware of that I can help and support you and that create that environment? So it's demystifying what is mental health, creating structures that support the employee and their families or the people around them with the challenges and issues they're dealing with. Because again, like Lynn mentioned, when I started working, I was told, leave your problems at the gates, come to work. When you're leaving, pick them up and go home. Right now, we come with our full self, with our issues, with our baggage, with whatever is going on. Then the other thing is, what tools or what resources are we providing our line managers to support and enable people to have a conducive work environment? And we're not just beyond policy. This is in the everyday. How does it show up? And then finally is also letting people know that these tools and resources are available to you should you want to use them, so that you can be able to live your life with whatever it is you're dealing with. We all have things we're dealing with, but how do you live your life and understand that whatever it is that you're going through, there's help that you can get.
Absolutely. I really love that, Mogo. And, it kind of feeds into, what kind of inspired the conversations that we're looking forward to having during the conference. It's about how do we simplify, first of all, demystifying what mental health is. When we started, we said a lot of times people think mental health is a specific conversation for the Dr. Wangais in the room to use jargon that we don't understand, and it's their special project. But through this conversation, we're seeing that it's things that are showing up in our daily lives, all of us, for each and every one of us. And so through those kinds of conversations, we're looking forward to having real people talking about their real experiences and coming up with practical things that we can do to manage our mental health. Thank you for that. Lynn, let me come to you. For someone in the early or mid stages of your career, and your peers at that level, who you mentioned that there's this pressure to be constantly on, right? So when you're feeling constantly on, or when you're feeling constantly on, juggling expectations, deadlines, growth, personal growth, professional growth, what is one small realistic habit that they can introduce this week to protect their mental energy?
I would say the first thing is, first and foremost, is that don't stress on things that you cannot control. That's the first thing, because I feel like a lot of the times there's so many things like we really put on our plate, or you try and ensure, okay, first of all, if I cannot control what's happening, then why do I have any business worrying about it? It's easier said than done. But what I always do is I always have my journal and I always ask myself, what exactly it is that I can control today? If I can be able to control it, then I'll take steps to do so. But if something that's out of, my hands and I cannot be able to control it, then you just let it go. You cannot be able to control when your boss gives you a promotion. I know you've given yourself a deadline, like at this point, I need to be a manager here, but you cannot control the aspect of getting that promotion. You understand? You cannot control a particular outcome. Don't stress about it. The third thing is, setting boundaries. If you say, as long if the office, if there's no pressure, there's no need of, and I always say this, there's no need, if you feel that let's say you're not working from home, but there's no need of you to carry your work at home. Spend time at home and be able to enjoy your space at home. And I think one of the things that actually created that mental is because our homes are our sanctuaries, right? But then now with COVID, what happened was that you could not be able to differentiate your place of work from your house, because you're working from your house, which is meant to be a sanctuary. But now if you have that difference, please, if you can leave your work at the office and spend time and be present at home, that is extremely, extremely important. But I think my biggest piece of advice would be, please do not, if you cannot control something, do not get anxiety over it, because I feel like that's what really, really gives us, because we want something to happen and we want it to happen now. But if it can't happen now, then that creates some sort of anxiety. So in my head, I'm like, if you can't control it, just leave it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lynn. I'm getting this, I even went back to look at what was Lynn's quote. And it's that actual giving yourself permission to, pause and stop and put up boundaries and choose yourself. And I'm really seeing that coming across. And I'm like, note to self, when I'm faced with a situation or something's weighing in on my mind, just pause and evaluate what's urgent, what is important, what do I have control over, and that's quite powerful. And Dr. I'm seeing you nodding. As you're nodding and you're adding into that, from an emotional intelligence perspective, what is a simple daily practice and it's very similar to what I was asking, what Lynn was sharing. What's a simple daily practice that people can use to become more aware of their mental and emotional state and respond more intentionally than react? And I know that you shared a little bit, but to be honest, that was a bit of a scary process. So what's something a little, Mugo, you're laughing, but I know you felt it too. But what is one that is a simple one that we can use even repeatedly in a day to kind of help us get grounded and protect our mental health?
Good question. Very, very good question. There are many things that have been touted. Just like what Lynn said, moving your body is really, really important. What I actually, in fact, the studies are really clear that exercise is about 1.5 times the effect of an antidepressant for depression. Or medicine for anxiety. So I don't think there's one particular practice that we need to do. I think it's more of a combination of things that can do. And I like to summarize them as SWIM, SWIM. So these four things, these four health habits have actually been shown to have a big impact on mental health. S stands for sleep. So how much sleep are we getting in a day? We know that if you have less than 6 hours of sleep at night, you are at a very high risk of mental health issues. And the mental health issues, anxiety, bipolar, any cognitive dysfunction like schizophrenia, Ds for depression. So ABCDs of the mental health, we know that already. So on the other hand, more than 10 hours of sleep, more than 9 to 10 hours of sleep is also harmful for your mental health. So we actually medically prove it. So the perfect is actually 7 to 9 hours maximum. So that's S, stands for sleep. W actually stands for water. So we do know that the body, if you don't take enough water, you affect a lot of the chemicals in the body that are needed for healthy regulation of your normal function. So your sodium, and many of the other, chemicals that you actually need. So water is a hidden gem that many of us tend to ignore. The other W actually stands for weight or your waist. Okay. And so being able to take care of our weight is really important, because obesity or being overweight has been linked to depression, it has been linked to anxiety, it has been linked to many of the mental health issues, even cancer. Weight is a risk factor for cancer. So W is really important. So sleep, W is weight and water. I stands for ingestion. So what are we feeding ourselves in terms of on our plates? It's lunchtime right now. There are foods that promote good mental health. There are foods that actually affect and worsen our mental health. So having a healthy nutrition plan is really, really key. So SWI and M is what Lynn talked about. M stands for motion. So moving our body, exercising, it's really, really, really key. So that's what I'm summarizing at. Swim. So are we swimming today? Really, really key.
Oh, I love that. And I love the way you've put it, because now I'm like, I can quickly tell myself at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day, what is my swim plan? And be able to plan my day to make sure that I'm covering those bases. And thank you so much for that, Dr. Wangai. And Mugo, as we come to you, we've talked about the individual and how to work on supporting and protecting our mental health. Now, for HR leaders who are looking at how to support mental health but feel constrained by time or resources or organizational pressure, what's a simple action that they can start implementing immediately that would make a meaningful difference?
That's a very interesting one. Pressure for time and resources. I think it's look at who are your partners, the people you're with within your network. What do I mean by that? So I talked about the example of medical providers. So whichever medical provider you have, they have an employee assistance program, right? Dr. Wanga is already lifting up his hand. And for the hidden gem is, even as a medical provider, insurance company, it's in their best interest to help you deal with these mental issues, because it also helps their bottom line. So they have resources which are baked into your cover that you can be able to get insights and information. So you don't need to request for big budgets, number one, for you to start having the employee assistance program. Number two is also having simple rules within the office space. What are your official working hours? What's your policy about sending emails after office hours? So those are things that don't require any budget approval. It's within the space of HR. You give employees a contract that says your official working hours are between X to Z. And then also the other thing that I forgot to mention that has come back is clarity. Do people have clarity of their roles within the organization? So as HR, how do we define the job description that clearly states what is Susan's role, what is Lynn's role, what is Dr. Wangai's role, in a clarity that this is my boundary. Anything beyond this is somebody else's issue to deal with. And then also simple things is helping managers understand what are some of the ways people are not showing up, and how to identify people who are not showing up fully or are struggling with one issue or another, and not being quick to label it as a performance issue, a disciplinary issue. At times, those routes cause more harm than actually helping the individual. And also, the other thing is looking at simple things. Your policy on sick leave. What does your sick leave policy say? Does the sick leave policy allow for somebody to call in and say, today, what Dr. Wangai said in the morning at the first of the call is, I'm not feeling okay. Can I sleep in? Yes, no. If I sleep in, I'll be able to be refreshed, I'll be able to be much better, and I show up better. People show up differently when they're policed or when they feel that it's an environment where I can be myself and I can deliver my best. How you treat people does have a very, very big impact on whether they abuse the policy or use it for their benefit.
I love that, Mugo. And, I think a big part of leadership is how you make people feel. Because when you tap into how they feel, then they decide how to give you discretionary effort or not, or how to apply. Human beings are very clever. They learn the rules so that they can know how to break them, right? So you need to go beyond the rules or the policies. You need to appeal to more. And that kind of brings in the question that we have from the audience, where, the question is, being empathetic as a leader, is there a possibility that you can discover someone going through mental health, and how does that empathy as in leadership show up to aid promoting mental health wellness? And I just throw it, and I don't know who will start with that. Mugo, go ahead.
I can pick that up. I think for me it's one thing as a leader to show empathy, but the question is it an organization culture whereby it's something that if I say that I'm struggling with depression or I'm bipolar, is it something that tomorrow I'll have a call with HR saying we need to have a conversation, or we need to separate? What is our mutual separation? So it's what is a culture, and that stems from the leadership within the organization in terms of do we look at mental health, mental issues as a problem, or is it something that we can work on as an organization to help somebody develop and improve? Again, if it's one manager talking about their challenges, if the organization culture is toxic, then that could be used against them in the workplace. So it's also what kind of an organization culture do you have? Is it supportive or is it toxic?
Thanks for that, Mugo. And I guess that then the responsibility really does fall on HR and leadership to build cultures that really do promote and support mental wellness. And Dr. Wangai, as Mugo was sharing, I saw you nodding and smiling a bit. It's like you had a thought you wanted to share. Go ahead.
No. Actually, yesterday I was invited to speak to the HR manager of one of the big insurance companies, and one of the things she was asking me is just what Mugo said. I don't have a budget, that's that big, but how can I actually improve the mental wellness of my staff here? And at the end of the day, if you think about it from a company or management or a HR perspective, a lot of it actually boils down to policies. It's a quick win. It's a low-hanging fruit. And some of the ideas I even gave her is, has she ever thought of instituting, you have sick leave, for example, but many organizations forward thinking right now actually offer what we call personal leave days. And for personal leave day, it could be a mental health day. So you just say, you know what, I'll use out of my 7 personal leave days in a year, I'll take this one as a mental health break. And you don't need to explain to anybody, you don't need to write a report on what you are doing on that day. It's a mental health day. A personal leave day could also mean your birthday, for example. Do we allow people to actually stay home on their birthdays? And that's it's a small thing, but to an employee or to a staff, it's a big boost to your mental day, to actually celebrate yourself. A personal leave day could also mean a day you take off to, to do a course, or something in terms of personal development. And in that case, so, and she looked at me, she nodded, she's like, actually, that's a really good thing. And we have the standard 21 days, but many organizations do 30. So those extra 9 days could be personal well-being, days that you're not spending much, but does a lot, makes a whole load of difference. Secondly, I'd like to echo what he said, is that many organizations have wellness packages that are provided to them by the insurer or the broker or whoever is underwriting for them. One of the things that I do when I support many of our corporate clients is that I design wellness packages. Not only are you taking your blood to test your liver or to taste your kidneys, the standard blood panel that we usually do, I always insist on putting in a mental health, a mental wealth offering in that wellness package. So fully covered by insurance. But in that package, we give you access 30 minutes to, a coach or to a counseling psychologist. And the company doesn't spend for that. And lastly, one thing that is really gaining traction globally is developing a manager's toolkit. And one of the things that we train managers, in the organization that I work in, we train managers on how to recognize the difference between a non-performing employee and an employee or a team member who is actually dealing with a mental health issue. And how do you then link them up to appropriate care, to appropriate pathways? So recognizing is really, really, really key. And once you're able to cascade mental health down from the manager down to the level of even peers. So we even train peer, what we call mental wellness champions. So in a department, you appoint a wellness champion, out of 30 in this department. And this guy, his main KPI, for HR, his main KPI is to make sure that he has a feel of, his colleagues and knows how to recognize things and link appropriately. So there are lots of things that really inexpensive, but make a whole load of difference, from an organizational point of view.
I love that, Dr. Wangai. And those are the conversations. I think we assume a lot of things about leadership, and we are now making the strides to bridge that gap in capacity for leadership. But there's this conversation about part of being a leader is being able to recognize the early signs when mental health is at risk. And those conversations are really, really meaningful. And I love that you brought in the mental champions, because that's something we're looking forward to exploring further, even at the conference, to hear some of the stories of some of the organizations that have put that, a network of mental health champions, to see the impact that it's really having. Oh, thank you so much for that. Lynn is burning.
Yes.
She's raised her hand, she's done a cartwheel. Please, Lynn, jump in.
No, I think just to add on to what you have said, we've talked about creating supportive systems for people, but we've not explored. Yes, you can create all these systems, but do your employees feel safe? Because you have to create psychological safety for people to use these support systems. So you need, like, for instance, is there some level of psychological safety in where you work or in these offices? So for instance, I'll give an example. There's something that where I was before, in my department, I introduced something called Cupcake Fridays. Now, Cupcake Fridays is just a thing where every last Friday of the month, everybody comes in with whatever it is that they're coming with for breakfast, and then we just sit and talk. What worked for us this month? what exactly did you feel? And people would initially, we thought it wasn't going to work, but then people started slowly opening up because they realized that creating such a forum in the department, we are not trying to fish out for information and then take it to HR and say, okay, maybe, this guy's had a back and forth in the office. It's just more or less trying to understand each other and try to figure out what worked this month. Someone would be like, oh, I didn't like how you responded to me in that email. That tone of yours, I didn't like it. But the whole idea is bring people together constantly and try and get feedback in terms of the culture, in terms of what's working, in terms of what's not working. So that's the other thing. And also, you as leaders, are you modeling openness? Are you modeling vulnerability? You understand? You can come in and say, okay, guys, I'm not able to come in today to work because I wasn't able to come in today at work because my child was sick or my baby was sick. Is this something that leaders, they model? Because if I'm a leader and I'm able to speak out and I'm able to be vulnerable, then it just trickles down to the rest of the people. And then also conversations that you have, that mental aspect of, instead of heaping onto somebody work on someone who's already overwhelmed, the first question is, I have this thing I need you to assist me with. Do you have capacity? So you make the aspect of workload a mental conversation. Like, we want to do this project and I know you're handling this, but do you have capacity to do this? If I don't, you speak to other people. So it becomes a conversation. So people even feel respected and they feel that, my mental load is actually being taken care of and we're having a conversation. The other thing is the check-ins. Like, let's not, there's the way you just say, okay, how are you? And you're good and you move on. But now you need to sit with a person and ask them, by the way, how are you really? Like, what's going on with you? We might say we do the consistent check-ins maybe once, but how often do you do it? The other thing I would say lastly is making support visible and easy to access. For instance, if you're an organization that can't afford to have, the employee assistance programs, do you have resources? Where can people read about issues around mental health? Do you have, do you have resources? Do you have things people can read? That are easily available in the company's folders, in the company website, or are there. And then also the other aspect is confidentiality in these conversations. If somebody comes to talk to you about, I'm having a struggle, or maybe I'm dealing with violence at home, the next thing, you're not a topic of discussion over tea, or over coffee in the kitchen counter where you're hearing your story and you thought you told HR, and the next thing you know, everybody knows about it. So there's that aspect. But my biggest concern is we may have this system, but you need to create a psychologically safe environment for your employees. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Lynn, and for all of you, bringing it really home and sharing things that we can start applying as early as today, this afternoon. I can't believe the time. I always find that the time really flies when we have these sessions. I guess the conversations are just so sweet. As I come around for your parting shot, my audience, kindly go ahead and share with us, on a scale of 1 to 5, how valuable was the content to you? So coming round to you for the last one, guys, if there's one thing that you'd want people to remember about making mental health simple and practical in their everyday lives, what would that be? Dr. you're looking straight at me, so let's start with you.
Oh my, she likes speaking on me today. Oh my. Oh, well, so one of the things I think I've mentioned in previous EQ forums is just the ABCs of mental health, the ABC framework. A is act, do something. So engage in some physical, some mental, some social activity to lift your mood, walking at 10 p.m. at Jeffries. Beautiful. Okay. So A is for act. We need to do something. B is belong. So belong means we do something, someone. Okay. So really our social connections to foster and strengthen our mental health, join a club, volunteer, visit your friends, have group activities, go to church, go to your chama. So belong, you need to belong somehow. And C is commit. So we need to do something meaningful. So remember, A was do something, belong, do something with someone. C is commit, do something meaningful. So we need to develop a practice of dedicating time, being very intentional to activities that give you some sense of purpose, some sense of achievement, some sense of, something more than me, So volunteer for a cause, help your neighbor, engage in some hobby, do something for someone else, something meaningful. So ABC, act, belong, and commit.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Dr. Muko, go ahead.
I may not be as deep as Dr. I think mine, I was just reflecting on something simple. I think for me, the simplest thing, and looking at my life and what are some of the decisions, is just appreciating who you are. You are perfect, you're beautiful, you're handsome, you are the best version of yourself that you are right now mentally. We all have ambitions to do other things. So it's just appreciating yourself as you are right now, first things first. Second thing I'd say is understand what are your boundaries? What are the things that make you happy? What are the things that drain you? And being very crystal clear. So even though we are approaching a long weekend this weekend, if it means you sitting in, just observing what are the things that drain you, what are the things that add energy into your life. Once you have that clarity, stick to those boundaries. There are times I get home and I have work to do, but all I want to do is watch a movie. It's okay. Just watch the movie. Sit down, Netflix, and chill. There's no apologies. Nobody, the world won't end if you do that. Tomorrow will be another day. Wake up and do it. And then for me, the final one I think is also be active, move. If it's walking, walk. If it's running, run. If it's swimming, swim. Whatever it is, do something. Keep your body active. There is something about your muscles and movement that helps release a dopamine that Lean was talking about. That dopamine gives you a feel-good feel. Dr. Wangai, I've learned something new that it gives you 1.5x better than antidepressants. So, and I now see the junkies who like gym and why they like the gym and working out. But that dopamine is a feel-good chemical that is released in your brain. And the more you have of that, the better it is for you, and the better it is for your mental well-being and your health. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Muko. Lynn, parting shots.
I think for me, all I would say is that mental health is not always about fixing everything, but sometimes it's just all about noticing where you are and choosing a small shift that feels kinder. And just in relation to that, I would just say that we need to just start learning to be kind to ourselves, because most of the reasons we find ourselves here is because we're not kind to ourselves. Setting a boundary every other day, that translates to being kinder to yourself. When Dr. talks about, you need to move your body, you need to eat well, you need to sleep well, that's being kind to yourself and being kind to your body. You need to understand, all these other things all translate to you need to be kind to yourself. And when you find that you're not kind to yourself, give yourself grace, because I always tell people the next day is a new day and it gives you an opportunity to start again. Learn to be kind to yourself. And when you find that you're not kind to yourself, just learn to constantly give yourself grace. Yeah.
Thank you so much to my panelists. I think I get more from these conversations than anyone else. I don't know. Participants, audience, please continue to share your reflections on, how valuable was this. Mine is to just really thank you guys. It's been amazing. I hope that you've enjoyed it as much as I have. I had shared the LinkedIn links for our panelists, and feel free to also reach out to us on info@pts.co.ke. And before I let you go, my dear panelists, I just want to you know, emphasize on how meaningful these conversations are and how impactful. And at PTS, we have an annual conference that we are really excited about. I think I've mentioned it a couple of times, which reveals my excitement around it. On May 22nd, to our audience, you can just scan the QR code that's been on the screen. On May 22nd, where this year we're going beyond a half a day to a full day. And what you can expect is conversations like this. We'll have panel conversations. We'll have mini workshops where we'll break into targeted groups such as HR professionals, leaders in industry, entrepreneurs, and specifically mental health champions. This is a special call out to our mental health champions to come in, and whether you have started the journey in your organization and don't know how to go about it, come and listen and learn from others, and also get tools that can help you to roll that out in your organizations. So kindly come through on May 22nd, land on our page, and you will be able to make your registration or reach out on info@pts.co.ke. And I'm sure it will be shared on the comments there. And so thank you so much, Mugo. Thank you so much, Lynn. And thank you so much, Daktari. Wishing you a fantastic afternoon. And next time we'll do lunch in person because of the human connection that we've learned is so important. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
So as we wrap up this conversation, as we close off this conversation, it reminds us that mental health is not a distant concept, but something shaped in the small, everyday moments of how we think, how we feel, and how we show up at work. Through the lens of emotional intelligence, we've explored how unrecognized stress, that constant pressure, and overlooked emotional signals can quietly impact our well-being, performance, and interactions. At the same time, we've seen that it doesn't take drastic change to make a difference. When we build awareness, we pause with intention, and when we make simple, practical shifts, we start creating the space for resilience, for clarity, and more sustainable ways of working. Therefore, supporting mental health is not about fixing everything all at once, but about starting where we are and choosing small actions that make a real impact over time. Thank you all for joining episode 54 of EQ Lunch and Learn. We appreciate your presence, engagement, and commitment to this session. We look forward to hearing a little bit more about what topics that you would like to hear about, or see discussed in future LNLs. Thank you, and wishing you a fantastic afternoon.